Hello my beautiful watchers, and welcome back to my ongoing comparison of the Scott Pilgrim film adaptation to the comic series it's based on. We are now up to volume 5 of 6, Scott Pilgrim vs. the Universe. So, coming up on the home stretch for these bad boys, I sincerely hope I've encouraged some of you to give these comics a go if you haven't already done so, and if I have, please do let me know. You inspired me to read the book is my favourite kind of comment. Because this particular book doesn't end with the death of the evil X's, I went a little longer with the film as well, bringing this volume's allotment up to a whopping 10% of the overall runtime. So yeah, let's just jump right into this. Here's what happened in this particular part of the film. After being violently beaten by two people in one night, Scott decides to indulge himself alcohol-wise, despite having been a devoted advocate for Coke Zero up until now. Coke Zero, or the lack of flavour of a sugar-free drink while still being filled with enough chemicals to sterilise a homicide crime scene. His cattiness is exponentially intensified by this combination of pain and booze, to the point where Ramona finally has enough of his sass and departs, leaving him with a list of upcoming opponents and the suggestion that he is just a future evil X waiting to happen. Stephen Stills recognizes the names of the next two X's and reveals that, as it happens, they are their next opponents in the Battle of the Bands, the Kakinagi twins, Kyle and Ken. The fight with Ramona seems to have filled Scott with pent-up aggression, and he's itching to destroy his new opponents. Stephen Stills admits to liking his energy, though is distressed to discover that the plan is for both bands to play simultaneously until there is somehow a victor. Scott tries to snap him out of his panic, but is quickly distracted when Kim points out Ramona is in the crowd talking to a mysterious gentleman in glasses. The twins make an impressive entrance and start to perform. Their opening number manifests as a wave of energy that damages Sex Bob-omb's stage, showing that this Battle of the Bands is also going to be a literal battle. Sex Bob-omb attempt to counter-strike, but are overwhelmed by the twins' music, which is so powerful it takes on the form of a pair of dragons. Stephen Stills is about ready to throw in the towel, but the revelation that the mysterious G-Man who's been running this competition is actually Gideon, the jerk who organised the League of Evil X's, and seeing him making moves on Ramona sends Scott into a rage, powering their music into the form of a big Yeti thing that destroys their opponents. And just in case you've not seen the film, I know this shit sounds random as fuck, but I swear, this far into a movie directed by Edgar Wright, no matter what happens, it just seems to make perfect sense to you. Scott earns so many points he's rewarded an extra life. He runs to find Ramona, briefly coming face to face with knives but awkwardly avoiding conversation with her. Finding Ramona outside the venue, he tries to confess his love for her, but seems unaware that he's substituting in the word lesbians instead. Ramona breaks it to him that they have to break up because she can't help herself around Gideon. Gideon himself joins the conversation along with the rest of the band and tells them he's so impressed with their performance he's going to offer them a huge contract. Scott refuses, but the rest of the band immediately take him up on the offer and Ramona leaves with him. Scott is left alone with the realization that he had said lesbians. His sister makes a half-hearted attempt to cheer him up and he walks in on Wallace getting his freak on. Wallace gives Scott the heads up that he's going to need Scott to move out soon and commiserates with him about Ramona, telling him he should probably just move on. Scott gets a phone call from Gideon, who smugly says he wants to bury the hatchet with him and invites him to the grand opening of his new nightclub. Wallace tells Scott he's changed his mind and he should go ahead and kill Gideon. And that is a wrap for this volume's worth of runtime, so let's move right on to the volume itself and see if there's any tines left this far into the, at the time, unfinished series. The comic opens on Scott's 24th birthday, though almost immediately cuts to a Day of the Dead themed party at Julie's apartment. This is evidently not the first such themed party she has thrown recently, and the protagonists are starting to feel a little burned out on them. With more than a little foreboding, Ramona notices her next two exes are on the scene, Kyle and Ken, the twins she dated. To save time, they go and confront them. The twins seem to be kind of catty bitches and deny that they're here to fight Scott, because they're going to set a robot they made on him instead. While Scott confronts this metal menace, the twins throw some more shade on Ramona until Kim gets bored of it and takes it outside for some air. As Scott still lacks a cell phone, Wallace has apparently taken to drunkenly texting Ramona messages to pass on to him. Kim, a woman who seems to spend most of her life in a perpetual state of exasperation, is even more so at the moment because Stephen Stills' obsession with recording Sex Bob-omb's album has pretty much destroyed the band altogether at this point. Back inside the party, Stephen Stills reveals it's also destroyed his relationship with Julie, though that happens all the time anyway. Knives is still pining for Scott, which Stephen Stephen Stills points out is ridiculous, as she has to be aware by now that Scott two-timed her. It suddenly dawns on Knives that Ramona might not know about it yet. Scott finally defeats the robot to polite applause. The next day, Scott wears down Ramona's phone battery playing video games all day, so she requests he get her charger. He spies a letter addressed to Gideon in the same drawer, but probably due to his character growth in the last volume, decides he doesn't want to put his hand in that particular beehive right now. However, while it seems Scott finally has his shit together, Ramona seems to be developing some insecurities over Scott's history with ending relationships badly, then forgetting all about them, and they're manifesting themselves in an eerily similar haircut-orientated way. After yet more excruciating album recording, Stephen Stills informs the band they have to practice because they have a gig booked. However, it's been so long since they actually played together, they kind of suck way more than usual now. Knives is talking things out with Tamara again and seems to still be under the delusion that Scott was a good person when they dated and Ramona somehow corrupted him into cheating on her. The band in general, and Stephen Stills in particular, are really stressed out about being underprepared for the gig, but go on stage anyway. Ramona is accosted by Knives in the bathroom. She can't seem to make up her mind about whether she wants to talk to her or attack her, and settles for doing both, eventually giving up on the fight and the lies she was telling herself and revealing that Scott was cheating on both of them. Shocked, Ramona returns to the venue just in time to see Scott decapitate another robot with his bass. Apparently the entire gig was a trap set up by the twins. Kim wants to finish playing anyway, but Scott's guitar is broken. Ramona requests some time alone, which Scott doesn't see as a red flag at first because he has no idea she knows the truth now. However, after a few days of it, even he can't ignore the fact that something's wrong and talks Kim into arranging a meeting with her so he can accidentally walk in on it. And during the resulting conversation, Kim reveals that Holly, her new roommate and the only person she gets on with besides them, was sleeping with the guy she was seeing behind her back. And this mention of two-timing makes Ramona's head start to glow again, though Kim and Scott are unable to convince her that it's happening. The next few pages of the comic chronicle how the entire cast are starting to get at each other's throats, more themed parties at Julie's, another even bigger robot attack on Scott from the twins, more assholery from the twins towards Ramona, and Kim finally managing to get a photo of her head glowing to prove it to her. After Scott defeats the robot again, he joins Kim and Ramona in downing an entire bottle of tequila, which seems to temporarily put a hold on their troubles. However, after they go their separate ways, Kim is almost immediately kidnapped by the twins, Princess Peach style, and after some drunken sex, Ramona sobers up enough to finally ask Scott if he cheated on her with Knives. Scott tries to get off on the technicality that no, he cheated on Knives with her. The conversation predictably goes dramatically downhill from there. Scott is of the opinion that his attempts to improve himself should count for something, but is painfully aware that Ramona would be well within her rights to dump his cheating ass immediately. The next morning she is still there, though Scott's attempts to find absolution have to be immediately put on hold as he gets a text from Kim filling him in on the whole kidnapping situation, and he has to run off to save her. Unfortunately, Ramona didn't hear what he said and doesn't see the message. Even though they're finally fighting him themselves, Scott doesn't do so well against the twins, as once again he has no memory of drinking, so doesn't understand why he's hungover. The twins are also fighting together, which seems unfair to Scott, but they explain they're working together now because Ramona didn't date both of them in some sort of borderline incestuous menage a trois like everyone seems to have assumed. She was two-timing them and playing them off against each other. Scott is somewhat deflated by this latest example of his girlfriend's former lack of morals and current hypocrisy. Kim successfully deduces that this is a battle tactic the twins are employing to win the fight, but it works on Scott anyway. Somewhat desperate, Kim pretends that she got a text from Ramona saying that she forgives Scott and believes in him. The twins are shocked that Ramona is capable of such character growth, and Scott is inspired to defeat both of them in a single super powerful attack. After extracting her from her cage, Scott immediately abandons Kim to go and talk to Ramona. When he gets home, he finds her sitting on the bed with a fresh haircut. He tells her that it doesn't matter to him who she was, he only cares about the now and believes that she is a good person in it. She smiles, thanks him, tells him she had a good time, then vanishes in a blinding glow of light, leaving behind the unopened letter to Gideon that Scott saw and the cat named Gideon. In his confused attempt to find her, Scott accidentally lets Gideon the cat out, who promptly runs away, and he discovers he's locked himself out without keys. He spends his immediate future crashing with his friends and family, trying to find the cat, and lamenting the ruination of his personal world. He also picks up the unfortunate habit of assuming that everyone he meets who happens to be wearing glasses is Gideon, starting with Wallace's boyfriend Mobile when he finally meets him in person. Kim decides that the best thing for her right now is to move back up north and live with her parents for a bit. Scott apologizes for, well, being him, then goes back to his everlasting cat recovery quest. Sometime later, it seems Scott's parents are back in the country and help him to find a new apartment, one he can, actually get into. He mistakes his own brother Lawrence for Gideon because of course he does, he's a fucking idiot. Lawrence reminds Scott that the bass guitar he's been using for years now is actually his and claims it back from him. Going back inside after seeing them off, Scott finally decides to read the letter to Gideon. Surprisingly, it's a Dear John, but Scott notes that because she still had it, it meant Gideon never saw it. Scott then gets a phone call. The caller tries to be coy and talk in doublespeak, though when he realizes Scott just isn't going to pick up on it, Gideon straight up asks him when he wishes to die. The Dom's final thoughts. While it is somewhat formulaic to have a lowest moment, darkest before the dawn type installment right before the final volume, I have to say this one was at least a really well executed example of it. All the positive plot and character development of the past 4 volumes was systematically torn apart, but not in one fell swoop in the last few pages. The entire comic was devoted to everyone ending well up shit creek without a paddle. Scott loses everything: his girlfriend, his band, his friends, his home, his pet, even his guitar. He has been stripped away to nothing, and it all makes perfect sense. As depressing as it is, that's what I like the most about this volume. This isn't some forced conflict crowbarred in at the last minute to build tension for the finale. A lot of these things were a long time coming. Ramona was going to find out about the Knives relationship overlap eventually. Kim's clearly been unhappy in Toronto since the start of the comic. Stephen Still's self-destructive behavior was set up volumes ago, and they even took the time to mention that Scott's bass was borrowed from his brother in volume 2. As you have undoubtedly deduced from these summaries, while there is slightly more runtime assigned to the events of this volume, there is little to nothing of the volume's events in the film. The twins don't even talk, there's not a robot to be seen, and their final, or I should say only confrontation, is unrecognizable to the comic version. While the film still partakes of the third act breakup, it's more of a stalling of Scott's forward momentum than a complete undoing of all that he has. Despite his devastated reaction, because the timeline is so much shorter, it's inescapably noticeable that Scott just has significantly less to lose. I've joked about the battles with the X's being pushed to the background before, but in this comic, on several occasions, the battles are literally taking place in the background of the panels. I found that very amusing. In case you forgot, the extra life was earned much earlier in the comic, after Scott defeated Todd. I'm guessing this was in the hopes that the audience might have forgotten about it before its reappearance at the end. As the film wasn't coming out in yearly installments, it really didn't have a chance of that happening, so it honestly doesn't really matter where in the story they put it. There's clever stuff in this volume, like the callback to Scott's doubts being represented as a literal self-reflection, showing that that's what Ramona is going through right now, and the significance of symbolic haircuts makes a comeback as well. Even though it's silhouetted, and sex has never exactly been a taboo subject in these comics, I've got to say it was super weird to see an actual sex scene portrayed on panel because the kawaii manga-inspired art style makes everyone look so super childlike. I mean, maybe it's just me, but ugh. All in all, there's really not all that much I can talk about here adaptation-wise. This volume was clearly not finished enough for the filmmakers to use as a guide. O'Malley either didn't want to or couldn't borrow any more imagery from the film, and the plots have diverged so much at this point they might as well be completely different stories with completely different characters. All I can really say is, well, at least it was a good volume even if it wasn't part of the film, and at least Edgar Wright managed to make something really cool in its place. Thank you for joining me, my beautiful watchers. Do remember that the YouTube algorithm sucks, but sharing, commenting, liking, and subscribing makes it suck less, yada yada yada. See you in the finale. Hello again, my beautiful watchers. I just wanted to take this opportunity to give you a quick reminder that there's a wonderful website called Patreon that's been allowing online producers to actually make a living doing what they do, since apparently YouTube's decided that they shouldn't anymore. Basically, they offer the chance to pledge a certain amount of money per month or per video in exchange for various rewards offered by the creator. There's a variety of stuff you can earn by becoming one of my patrons, including early access to all videos and taking part in that survey you see at the start of every Lost in Adaptation episode. That's actually a very important part of the process, as I use it to gauge how much I'm going to need to explain about the book and the film before I start comparing them. If you decide to become a higher level contributor, your name will be added to the credits that you're seeing right now, and you'll be given the option to join my private chat room so you can regularly talk with me and other patrons. If you're keen enough to join the topmost tier of patronage, you'll earn the most coveted of all the rewards, the chance to pick a future adaptation to be reviewed by yours truly. However, if right now you are thinking, my goodness the Dom, I can't do that, for I have
no money left after building a personal fortress to prepare for the coming zombie apocalypse. Do you have any idea how expensive a lifetime supply of food, water, and ammunition is?
Fear not, it would still be a huge help to me if you were to give that like button the old clickaroo, share this episode on social media with perhaps a little recommendation to your friends to check it out, and subscribe if you've not already. It really helps my channel grow and reach new beautiful watchers. I hope you have a most pleasant day, and I will see you in the next episode.